The rain pounded Brooklyn's streets, a relentless drumbeat against the pavement. As 18-year-old Isaiah Carter stood frozen under a flickering street lamp, his backpack slung over one shoulder. His father's voice still echoed in his head. "You're no son of mine." Hours earlier, Isaiah had confessed he was gay, and the world he knew shattered in a single venomous sentence. He was alone now, the weight of rejection heavier than the soaked clothes clinging to his skin. Yet, in that moment, a spark of defiance flickered in his chest. He wasn't broken yet. Isaiah adjusted his backpack, stuffed with a few clothes and his sketchbook, and walked into the night, determined to prove his father wrong. This was not the end of his story. It was the beginning. Isaiah's feet carried him to a familiar coffee shop in Park Slope, its neon sign glowing like a beacon. Inside, the warmth hit him like a hug, the scent of roasted beans mixing with the hum of quiet conversations. He slid into a corner booth, his dark eyes scanning the room, searching for something, someone, to anchor him. That's when he saw Mateo Alvarez, an 18-year-old barista with a kind smile and a mop of curly hair, wiping down the counter. Mateo's presence was a quiet comfort, like a song you didn't realize you needed until it played. They'd met weeks ago when Isaiah, an aspiring artist, had sketched Mateo during a slow shift. Mateo had laughed, calling the drawing too flattering, and their banter had sparked something unspoken. Now, as their eyes met across the crowded shop, Mateo's smile faltered, sensing something was wrong. He crossed the room, sliding into the booth across from Isaiah. "You look like you've been through hell," Mateo said softly, his voice carrying a faint Puerto Rican accent. Isaiah tried to laugh, but it came out as a shaky breath. "Yeah, you could say that." He hesitated, then let the truth spill out. His father's rage, the slammed door, the ultimatum to fix himself or never come back. Mateo listened, his brown eyes steady, never wavering. When Isaiah finished, Mateo reached across the table, his hand brushing Isaiah's. "You don't need to be fixed," he said firmly. "You're enough." Those words cracked something open in Isaiah. For the first time that night, he felt seen, not as a disappointment but as himself. Mateo offered him a place to crash, a small apartment above the coffee shop where he lived with his older sister, Elena. Isaiah hesitated, pride warring with desperation, but Mateo's quiet insistence won out. "You're not alone in this," he said, and Isaiah believed him. The apartment was cramped but warm, filled with mismatched furniture and the faint smell of jasmine from Elena's candles. Elena, a 25-year-old nurse with a no-nonsense attitude, took one look at Isaiah and declared, "You're staying as long as you need." She didn't ask questions, just handed him a blanket and pointed to the couch. Isaiah lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, Mateo's words echoing in his mind. "You're enough." For the first time in hours, he felt a flicker of hope. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the apartment's small windows, painting the room in gold. Mateo was already up, brewing coffee, his movements quick and practiced. "So," he said, handing Isaiah a mug, "what's the plan?" Isaiah didn't have one, not really. He'd always dreamed of making it as an artist, but his father's voice had drowned out those ambitions, calling them pointless. Now, with nowhere to go, the dream felt both impossible and necessary. Mateo had an idea. He knew a local art collective, a group of queer creatives who hosted pop-up galleries in abandoned warehouses. "They're always looking for new talent," he said, his eyes bright with possibility. "Your sketches are incredible, Isaiah. You should show them." Isaiah's stomach twisted with doubt, But Mateo's enthusiasm was infectious. Maybe, just maybe, he could start over. That afternoon, they walked to a warehouse in Bushwick, its walls covered in vibrant murals. The collective, led by a 30-year-old non-binary artist named Riley, welcomed Isaiah with open arms. Riley's sharp wit and warm energy put him at ease, and when he showed them his sketchbook, pages filled with raw, emotional portraits, they didn't just see talent, they saw a story. "This is real," Riley said, tapping a drawing of a boy staring into the distance, his face etched with longing. "You've got something to say." For the first time, Isaiah felt like his art mattered. Riley invited him to join their next gallery show, a chance to display his work to a real audience. It was a lifeline, a way to rebuild what his father had torn down. But as he and Mateo left the warehouse, Isaiah's phone buzzed. A text from his father, "You're making a mistake. Come home and fix this." The words hit like a punch, dragging up every doubt Isaiah had buried. He stared at the screen, torn between anger and a desperate wish to be enough for the man who'd raised him. Mateo noticed the shift in Isaiah's expression. "You don't owe him anything," he said, his voice low but fierce. "You get to choose who you are now." Isaiah nodded, but the weight of his father's words lingered, a shadow he couldn't shake. As they walked back to the apartment, their shoulders brushing, Isaiah realized he wasn't just fighting for his future. He was fighting for the courage to love himself, and maybe, just maybe, to love someone else. The warehouse buzzed with energy as Isaiah set up his corner for the gallery show, his hands trembling slightly as he pinned his sketches to a makeshift display. Each drawing felt like a piece of his soul exposed, portraits of strangers, friends, and moments of quiet pain, all rendered in sharp charcoal lines. Mateo stood nearby, arranging fairy lights around the display, his presence a steady anchor in the chaos. The crowd began to trickle in, a mix of Brooklyn's eclectic artists, students, and curious locals. Isaiah's heart raced as strangers lingered over his work, their murmurs of admiration mingling with the soft jazz playing in the background. A woman with bright pink hair paused at a sketch of two hands intertwined, her eyes softening. "This feels so real," she said, glancing at Isaiah. "Who's the artist?" Riley pointed to him, and Isaiah felt his face heat up. He wasn't used to this attention, validation, people seeing him. Mateo caught his eye from across the room, flashing a grin that made Isaiah's chest tighten. There was something about Mateo's quiet confidence, the way he moved through the world without apology, that made Isaiah want to be braver. But the weight of his father's text still lingered, a nagging voice whispering that he was throwing his life away. He pushed it down, focusing on the moment, on the people who saw value in his art. As the night wore on, a tall man in his 40s approached, introducing himself as Victor, a gallery owner from Manhattan. His sharp suit and sharper eyes made Isaiah nervous, but Victor's words were kind. "Your work has a voice," he said, studying a portrait of a young man staring into a stormy sky. "I'd like to feature you in a group show next month. Small, but it's a start." Isaiah's jaw dropped. A real gallery? It was more than he'd dared to hope. After Victor left, Mateo pulled Isaiah into a corner, his excitement bubbling over. "You did it, man. You're going places." Before Isaiah could respond, Mateo hugged him, a quick, warm embrace that left Isaiah's heart pounding. For a moment, they stood close, the noise of the crowd fading into the background. Isaiah wanted to say something, to name the feelings sparking between them, but fear held him back. What if he ruined this? The moment was interrupted by Elena, who burst into the warehouse with a grin, holding a tray of cupcakes she'd baked for the event. "You're killing it, Isaiah," she said, her voice loud enough to turn heads. She dragged him into a conversation with a group of artists, and soon, Isaiah was laughing, sharing stories of his sketches, feeling like he belonged for the first time in weeks. But as the night ended, his phone buzzed again. Another text from his father. "This is your last chance. Come home." The words cut deeper than Isaiah expected. He slipped outside, needing air, and found himself on the warehouse roof, staring at the city skyline. Mateo followed, sitting beside him in silence. "He doesn't get to define you," Mateo said finally, his voice soft but firm. "You're building something real here." Isaiah nodded, but the ache in his chest didn't fade. He wanted to believe Mateo, but part of him still craved his father's approval, a tether to the life he'd lost. The next few days were a whirlwind. Isaiah threw himself into preparing for Victor's gallery show, sketching late into the night in Mateo's apartment. Elena kept them fed with endless plates of arroz con pollo, her teasing about their obvious chemistry making Isaiah blush. Mateo, for his part, was a constant presence, helping with framing, offering feedback, stealing glances that made Isaiah's heart skip. One night, as they worked side by side, their hands brushed over a sketch, and neither pulled away. The air between them crackled, but Isaiah's fear of rejection, of losing this fragile new life, kept him silent. Then came the call. Isaiah's younger sister, Amara, only 15, her voice trembling over the phone. "Dad's been drinking again," she said. "He's angry, Isaiah. He keeps saying you abandoned us." Guilt twisted in Isaiah's gut. He hadn't just left his father. He'd left Amara, too. She begged him to come to her school play, a small role she'd worked hard for. "I need you there," she said. Against his better judgment, Isaiah agreed, knowing it meant facing his father. The play was in a cramped high school auditorium in Flatbush, the air thick with the scent of cheap perfume and nervous energy. Isaiah sat in the back, his heart pounding as he scanned the crowd. His father, Marcus, was there, his face a mask of stone. When Amara took the stage, her smile lit up the room, and Isaiah felt a surge of pride. But after the curtain fell, Marcus spotted him. "You shouldn't be here," his father hissed, pulling him into the hallway. "You're confusing your sister." Isaiah's voice shook, but he stood his ground. "I'm here for Amara, not you." Marcus's eyes flashed with anger, but before he could respond, Amara ran up, throwing her arms around Isaiah. "You came," she cried, oblivious to their father's glare. For a moment, Isaiah felt whole again, but Marcus's parting words lingered. "You'll regret this." As Isaiah left, Mateo waiting outside in his beat-up car, he wondered if he'd made a mistake, or if he was finally choosing himself. The Manhattan Gallery was a world away from the warehouse, a sleek, white-walled space with polished floors and soft lighting. Isaiah's sketches hung alongside works by other young artists, their raw energy a stark contrast to the gallery's elegance. He felt out of place in his borrowed blazer, but Mateo's hand on his shoulder steadied him. "You belong here," Mateo whispered, his breath warm against Isaiah's ear. The words sent a shiver down his spine, a mix of fear and longing he couldn't untangle. The opening night was a blur of faces and conversations. Victor introduced Isaiah to collectors, critics, and artists, each praising his work's emotional depth. A couple bought one of his sketches, a portrait of a boy staring at a broken mirror, for a sum that made Isaiah's head spin. For the first time, he saw a future where his art could sustain him. But the high was fleeting. In the quiet moments, his father's words crept back. "You'll regret this." Mateo noticed the shift in Isaiah's mood as they left the gallery. the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement. "You're not okay," he said, pulling Isaiah into a quiet diner. Over greasy fries and milkshakes, Isaiah confessed the guilt weighing him down, about Amara, about defying his father, about wanting a life that felt so out of reach. Mateo listened, his eyes never leaving Isaiah's. "You're not responsible for your dad's pain," he said, "but you are responsible for your own happiness." The words hit hard, and when Mateo's hand found his under the table, Isaiah didn't pull away. They sat there, fingers intertwined, the diner's neon glow casting a soft light over them. It was the closest Isaiah had come to admitting what he felt for Mateo, but the fear of losing him, kept the words locked inside. Back at the apartment, Elena was waiting with a bottle of cheap wine and a grin. To Isaiah, "The art star," she toasted, making him laugh despite himself. But the night took a darker turn when Amara called again, her voice small. "Dad's getting worse," she said. "He's saying awful things about you. I don't know what to do." Isaiah's heart sank. He promised to visit her, but the thought of facing Marcus again filled him with dread. The next day, Isaiah and Mateo went to a community center in the Bronx, where Riley was hosting a workshop for queer youth. Isaiah volunteered to teach a drawing class, hoping to lose himself in the work. The kids, ranging from 13 to 17, were a mix of shy and bold, their stories echoing Isaiah's own struggles. One girl, Jade, showed him a sketch of two girls holding hands, her hands shaking as she explained it was for her girlfriend. Isaiah knelt beside her, offering pointers, but her courage struck him deeper than he expected. These kids were fighting the same battles he was, and they were doing it with hope. Mateo watched from the sidelines, his pride evident. After the workshop, as they walked through the bustling streets, he stopped Isaiah under a streetlight. "You're amazing with them," he said, his voice low. "You're building something bigger than yourself." Before Isaiah could respond, Mateo leaned in, his lips brushing Isaiah's in a tentative kiss. Time stopped. Isaiah's heart raced, fear and joy colliding, but he kissed back, letting himself feel it all. The moment was shattered by a text from Amara. "Dad's here. He's drunk. Help." Panic surged through Isaiah. He and Mateo raced to Flatbush, finding Amara outside their old brownstone, her eyes red from crying. Marcus was inside, shouting, his voice carrying through the open window. Isaiah hesitated, but Amara's pleading look pushed him forward. He stepped inside, Mateo at his side, and faced his father. Marcus's eyes were bloodshot, his words slurred but sharp. "You think you can just walk away? You're tearing this family apart." Isaiah's voice shook as he responded, "I'm not the one tearing us apart. You are." The argument escalated, years of pain pouring out. Isaiah's fear, Marcus's anger, the love they'd both buried under pride. Mateo stepped between them, his voice calm but firm. "He's your son. You don't get to choose who he loves." Marcus froze, his face a mix of rage and something softer. Regret, maybe. Amara clung to Isaiah, sobbing, and he realized this wasn't just about him anymore. He took her hand, promising to be there no matter what. As they left, Marcus called after him, his voice breaking, "I didn't mean for this." Isaiah didn't look back, but the words stayed with him, a crack in the wall between them. The days after the confrontation were a blur of emotions. Isaiah moved between Mateo's apartment and the community center, throwing himself into his art and the kids' stories to keep the pain at bay. But Amara's calls grew more frequent, each one a reminder of the family he'd left behind. She was caught in the middle, torn between her brother and their father, and Isaiah felt the weight of her struggle as much as his own. Mateo was his rock, always there with a joke or a quiet touch to pull Isaiah back from the edge. One evening, as they sat on the apartment's fire escape, the city humming below, Mateo spoke up. "I'm falling for you, Isaiah," he said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "I don't want to push you, but I need you to know." Isaiah's breath caught. He wanted to say it back, to let himself fall, but the fear of losing everything, again, held him back. Instead, he leaned into Mateo, their foreheads touching, and whispered, "I'm trying." The gallery show was approaching, a bigger stage than Isaiah had ever imagined. Victor had secured a spot for him in a prestigious group exhibition, with critics and collectors from across the city. Isaiah's new sketches were bolder, infused with the pain and hope of the past weeks. Portraits of Mateo's smile, Amara's courage, the kids at the community center. Each stroke felt like a declaration. I am here. I am enough. But the night before the show, Amara called in tears. "Dad's in the hospital," she said. "He drank too much, Isaiah. They don't know if he'll be okay." The news hit like a tidal wave. Isaiah's first instinct was to shut down, to bury the pain as he always had, but Mateo wouldn't let him. "You don't have to forgive him," Mateo said, driving them to the hospital. "But you need to face this, for you, not him." The hospital was sterile and cold, the beeping machines a stark contrast to the chaos in Isaiah's head. Marcus lay in the bed, pale and frail, a shadow of the man who'd raised him. Amara sat beside him, holding his hand, her face streaked with tears. When Marcus saw Isaiah, his eyes widened, a mix of shame and relief. "I didn't want you to see me like this," he whispered. Isaiah didn't know what to say. The anger was still there, sharp and raw, but so was something else. Grief for the father he'd once idolized, hope for the man he might become. "I'm not here to fight," Isaiah said finally. "I'm here for Amara, and maybe for you too." Marcus's eyes filled with tears, but he said nothing, the silence heavy with unspoken apologies. The next day, Isaiah walked into the gallery with Mateo and Amara by his side. The room was packed, the air buzzing with anticipation. His sketches drew gasps and whispers, their raw honesty cutting through the crowd. A critic from a major art magazine approached, praising his fearless vulnerability, and Isaiah felt a surge of pride. This was his truth, his fight, laid bare for the world to see. After the show, Amara pulled him aside. "I'm proud of you," she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "And I think Dad is too, even if he can't say it." Isaiah hugged her tightly, the weight of her words sinking in. He looked at Mateo, who was watching them with a soft smile, and felt something shift inside him. For the first time, he wasn't afraid of what came next. That night, as they sat in the diner, Mateo took Isaiah's hand. "You're stronger than you know," he said. Isaiah smiled, the fear loosening its grip. "I'm getting there," he replied, and this time he meant it. He leaned in, kissing Mateo softly, letting himself feel the joy of being seen, loved, whole. The road ahead was uncertain, but with Mateo and Amara beside him, Isaiah knew he could face it. Months passed, and Isaiah's life took on a new rhythm. His art was gaining traction, with galleries across the city requesting his work. The community center became a second home, where he mentored kids like Jade, helping them find their voices through art. Mateo was there through it all, his laughter and quiet support a constant light in Isaiah's world. They were building something together, not just a relationship but a life rooted in love and resilience. Marcus's recovery was slow, both physically and emotionally. He and Isaiah met occasionally, their conversations stilted but less hostile. Marcus never apologized outright, but his actions spoke louder. A card sent to Isaiah's first solo show, a quiet nod when Amara mentioned her brother's success. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Isaiah learned to let go of the need for his father's approval, finding strength in the family he'd chosen. Mateo, Elena, Riley, and the kids at the center. Amara thrived, her confidence growing as she navigated high school and her own identity. She joined Isaiah at the community center, sketching alongside the younger kids, her laughter filling the room. One day, she showed him a drawing of their family. Not as it was, but as it could be. Isaiah, Mateo, her, and even Marcus, standing together under a hopeful sky. "Maybe one day," she said, and Isaiah hugged her, tears in his eyes. The turning point came unexpectedly. Isaiah was invited to speak at a citywide queer youth conference, sharing his story alongside other artists and activists. The auditorium was packed, faces of all ages and backgrounds looking up at him. Mateo sat in the front row, his smile grounding Isaiah as he spoke about rejection, resilience, and the power of art to heal. He shared his sketches, each one a testament to his journey, and the crowd erupted in applause. Afterward, a familiar figure lingered at the back of the room. Marcus. He looked older, worn, but his eyes held something new. Pride, maybe, or regret. He approached Isaiah, his voice low. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I'm not there yet, but I'm trying." Isaiah nodded, the weight of years lifting slightly. "That's enough for now," he replied. They stood in silence, not quite reconciled but no longer enemies. That night, Isaiah and Mateo walked through the park where they'd first connected, the autumn leaves crunching under their feet. The air was crisp, the city alive around them. Mateo stopped under an oak tree, pulling Isaiah close. "I'm so proud of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Isaiah smiled, his heart full. "I love you," he said, the words finally free. Mateo's eyes lit up, and he kissed him, soft and sure, under the golden light. Isaiah's journey wasn't over. There would be more struggles, more doubts, but he'd learned something vital. His worth wasn't tied to his father's approval or society's expectations. It was in the art he created, the love he gave, the community he'd built. He'd been kicked out, cast aside, but what he did next, choosing himself, choosing love, had reshaped his world. And in that choice, he'd left his father's heart broken, not by anger, but by the quiet power of a son who refused to be anything less than whole.